Have you seen one of those advertisements on your phone asking you to donate to one of the worst humanitarian crises in the modern world? Yemen? Yes, I've seen them too, repeatedly. Enough that I too would be numb towards it if it weren't for the fact that I've been there and I've witnessed it with my own eyes. You must be wondering how we got here, how Yemen has fallen into crisis. My name is Maram. I was born and raised in Yemen. So let me finally tell you how we got here. It all started in 2011 when Yemen's president of 33 years was overthrown. As disruption and instability erupted, soon Yemen was not only in civil war, but also into massive economic corruption and crash that caused the worst man made famine. And today, 7 years into this merciless war, the rise of the voices begging for the restoration of peace in Yemen is just as deafening as the sounds of the bullets attempting to silence them. And it's no longer time for silence, it's time for expression. With hundreds of thousands of victims killed and wounded, the destruction of many areas, the displacement of many people from their homes, millions of people have lost their sources of income for the past 7 years. This is especially in the northern areas. As a result of the war and the deliberate cutting of salaries for more than 6 years, the large numbers of levies and taxes, the constant workplace harassment, the bombing of facilities and factories, both private and public jobs were lost. And Yemenis now have no choice but to sacrifice themselves in the front lines in hopes of a means of sustenance. Many of those fighters are young, mostly children, who volunteer their lives out of desperation in exchange for a nominal amount of money, or perhaps a warm meal on their table. They are women, youth, and children whose lives, futures, hopes, and aspirations were stolen by this crippling poverty. Their inability to go to school or attend universities has not only killed their ambitions, but also made them an easy target for recruitment by the armed and terrorist groups fueling the continuation of the war in Yemen. So imagine with me for a second, how would you feel if your child had to sacrifice their lives for a warm meal? And where would you be in life if you had no hope? We at SAM Organization for Rights and Development came to you from our country, devastated by conflict since 2015, to empower Yemenis, open their capacities, and support their independence. We are here to tell you the truth about Yemen beyond an advertisement, to convey to you our suffering as people so that the world may hear our voices and acknowledge our right to live in our homeland with peace, stability, and dignity. We want to take you to our country, once called Happy Yemen, unique in its history and known for engulfing everyone with a warm welcome. The welcome of our country, which was teeming with children going to school every morning, and the vibrant youths racing with ambition to the best levels of education so that they can build a better future for themselves and their families. But today, in our country, we find that the level of poverty doubles and the famine threatens more than 17 million people. To put that in perspective, that's as much as the whole population of the Netherlands. With more than 300,000 dead, hundreds and thousands more wounded, and millions displaced from their homes, the 70% of its majority, its women, youth, and children coerced into becoming fuel for the continued violence, the continuation of reliance on providing humanitarian aid since the beginning of the war until now has hindered the economic independence of Yemenis, and the lack of economic empowerment has deprived many of the needy in the light of the lack of sources of income. We at SAM knew that true help had to come quickly, and that the time for change was now. That we must help Yemen become independent and that we must open Yemenis' capacities, and that we must help them by supporting their talents and the projects that they want to create, and create opportunities for them outside of the front lines of the war. Because if we enable these women to work and have their own income, then they would no longer be dependent, and their children would have hope and go to school rather than worrying about their food on their table. And if these small projects expand, then more opportunities would be created across the community, creating a brighter future for the youth. We knew that this was the only way we could battle child recruitment, stop women dependency, alleviate job redundancy, and build a self-sustainable community that could help end this war. And so we put our conviction into action, and the results were wonderful. It all started with the president of our organization, Ms. Leila Thor, the driven woman who facilitated this initiative after numerous touching experiences with many of the detained children and women in need. So allow me to tell you the story through her eyes. You hate seeing children deprived of their childhood because you see your own children in their eyes. And so you make it your life mission to free them. And you succeed. You free many children and help return them to their families. But amongst them was an orphan, Hamid. He was around 17. He'd been detained and recruited to become a child soldier. He hadn't even graduated from high school. He was waiting and excited to graduate. So you ask him, "Why did you go to fight?" He says, "Because I'm an orphan. I don't have a dad. They offered me money and weapons, and this is the only work I could get through to." And it breaks your heart. And you tell him you are there for him and that you will help him have a future. You make him promise that he will never, never again disregard his life and join these vicious front lines again. He promises, and from there on, starts calling you his mother. He calls you many times to check up on you. He was a boy with a lean heart. He tells you his dreams and aspirations and all about how he wants to go back to school and get into college and study business. But suddenly, for 1 year, he disappears. You try reaching his phone, but the line never goes through. And you wonder where he is, hoping he will call you like he always does. But you don't hear from him until one day you're on Facebook and you find his brother, who has a post with Hamid's picture. You feel a pit drop in your stomach and you message him. "What happened?" you ask, to Hamid. And that's when you're told the one thing you hoped you'd never hear. "I'm sorry for your loss. He always talked about you, how much he loved you, and how you were always a mother to him." He was recruited by the Houthis again because he was poor and he couldn't make it on his own. They put him in land mining, where a mine exploded, ending not only his life, but all his dreams and aspirations. Why? Why did he go, you ask? He promised me he wouldn't. And his brother says something that forever changes you, something that grows a conviction within you to stop children like Hamid from ever sacrificing their lives like this again. He says, because he did not want to be pitied or to beg for help. He would rather die with his dignity and independence over living under the mercy of others. This changes you and the way you view helping others. Then one day, as you're sitting in your office thinking about the ways that you can make a change, how you can save children like Hamid and prevent them from ever going to the front lines again, knock, knock. You hear, and you open the door to find a woman, Rhoda, a mother, and her son, Yusuf, who's just about 13, and whose shoes are no longer recognizable and whose outfit is barely keeping him warm. She tells you she's a mother to 7 children, a wife to a man who was driven into insanity after losing all his life's works and earnings. She says to you she lives in a house, or more so a shelter, which is missing doors and windows, protecting them in the slightest ways against the frosty nights, and she begs you, I need your help. Please help me. My children, I don't know what to do. And you decide, I can't just give her another food basket. Because if I feed her today, then who's going to feed her and her children tomorrow? And that's when you realize what needs to change, that you must help your people by supporting their independence. So you call her in, put her into consultation, ask her what she's good at and what she wants to learn. And she tells you she wants to become a perfumer. So you help train her in what she loves. You give her some startup money. She leaves you with gratefulness in her eyes. Knock, knock. You're in your office again 6 months later when you hear a knock. When you open the door, to your surprise, it's Rhoda and her son. And she has come to you with perfumes, telling you, take these. These are my gifts to you for helping me when I needed it more than ever, when no one else looked at me to help me. Look, I succeeded. I make perfumes now. It fills you with happiness to hear that. And you tell her, if you want to thank me, give that money to your children. Sell these and give that money to your children. That will make me happy. You then turn to Yusuf, her little son, who suddenly turns his back at you and you ask him, what's wrong? He says, please don't take my photo. When I grow up, I want to become successful. I don't want my friends and people to see that one day I was in need of others. And you can't help but remember, Hamid, don't worry, son. I would never strip you of your dignity. And they leave, both happy and content, and you think that you've fulfilled your purpose, and this is the last time you'll see them. Until 8 months later, you hear another knock. And to your surprise, Rhoda is back. Her son is in a completely new outfit, happily dignified and proud. I don't need your Ramadan baskets this year, she says to you. Thanks to you, I now have not only bought my own, but can also buy baskets for others. I've expanded my business, she says. Not only have I been successful, but today my whole neighborhood has joined my business and is now generating their own income too. And that's when your eyes open wide and you realize this is the future of helping people in Yemen. If we don't help them become independent, if we don't help them stand on their own feet, then all children will end up like Hamid. We want you to help us. We want to all be part of this change, whether with donations or efforts or expertise. Your presence and your interaction makes us happy. And today, it makes every Yemeni citizen feel that humanity unites us and that we are not left alone facing famine and the threat of death, but that you stand with us to work together to open a new horizon for the needy in the right and sustainable way that preserves their dignity and steps them toward a future of lasting peace. We would like to extend our hands to you today to be with us, to change the current dynamic of society in Yemen, to work together, to save children like Hamid and Yusuf, who is now a young man aspiring for a future away from the fighting fronts, and to save women like his mother, Rhoda, who are still struggling to save their families, and all the needy in Yemen, to take their hands and help them smile beyond war. They will be the basis for a flourishing society that works to silence the bullets, end the war, and move towards building peace. So join us now and let's build bridges together and be part of this everlasting change.